Yeah. So France was initially he's inclined towards geography. He believed in geographical determinism. That means any culture that is present, he thought initially depends upon the geography. So he used to think based on the geography you are residing, your culture will be present. But he goes to Arctic region. When he goes to Arctic region, he saw within the same geography different cultures. Culture. Geography is same, but cultures are different. Now, he said geographical determinism is not something that is true. So, henceforth, he moves away from that. And he also talks about the classical evolutionists. And he writes a work, Limitations of Comparative Research. Okay, so the name of the work is Limitations of the Comparative Method or Comparative Research Method of Anthropology. So in that work, he tries to find the flaws of classical evolutionists. First flaw, what he observes is that assumption of unilinear evolution. Assumption of unilinear evolution, that evolution happens in a unilinear fashion everywhere. Second, they saw that whatever the contemporary societies, whatever the societies that are there, now they have treated as, they have been placed under savagery, barbarism. That means you are considering that they are relics of the past. Okay, so considering the contemporary simple societies as evolutionary survivals is second thing that he has noted as a limitation and which he considers to be wrong. Next, you don't have proper data. Okay, so classification of societies based on weak data and inappropriate criteria. What criteria did you take and what are the proofs that you have or what are the evidences that you have to place a particular thing under the societal strata? Okay, so you don't have the proper evidence to place them in the particular stage of unilinear evolution. So you're placing them, but how? What is the evidence you have? So these are the three flaws that he has observed with classical evolutionists. So you can notice that he is more inclined towards the evidence. And he says that you can agree with Tyler and Morgan that certain technological inventions follow the evolutionary order. So, evolution to happen, certain technological inventions follow the order. You can agree with them, okay, with the technological inventions, evolution happen. Initially, there is bow and arrow, today you have rifle or gun. So, with time, the technological inventions happen, and through that, evolution happens. But you should not say it without proper evidence. That means without proper data, without proper field work. Okay, so without proper ethnographic evidence, you cannot talk about it. So, technology wise, you can say it, but you are talking that matrilineal preceded the patrilineal system or the animism preceded the polytheism. These all things you cannot talk about, because at least for these technological developments you can see the evidences. But how about these things which you are making hypothetical? Animism preceded the polytheism, monotheism, or magic, religion, science. So, if you're talking about this, you should have some data for it, or else you should not talk about it. So, he says that there is need for evidence or data based approach. Okay, so initially he was inclined towards geography, geographical determinism, but when he goes there he gives up and he turns towards anthropology. And within anthropology also, at that point of time already classical evolutionists were present. So then he observes them and he agrees with something. Okay, technological developments follow the evolutionary path, but you don't have proper data. If you have to say something, there is a need for ethnographical evidence. So that's what he says. Okay. So again, introduction, historical background, meaning, basic premises, applications or approaches, then individual scholars, criticism, conclusion. So he is the Franz Boas. So looks like Einstein, but not. Okay. So what is historical particularism? Studying history of a particular culture. No. Okay. So that is historical particularism. Studying history of a particular culture in detail. So here he highlights that you should study a particular culture in detail rather than making universalization or universal statement. Okay. So instead of considering culture as universal, because you cannot have the data for entire universe, all the cultures. So better study one particular culture. Okay. So his focus is more on the ethnographical study than ethnological study. What did I say? Ethnology, ethnography? Can you tell me what is the difference between ethnography and ethnology? I told you on the day one. Ethnology means already some people have written something, then you are trying to read it and trying to say the similarities and differences. That is ethnology. But ethnography means you go to one particular community or one particular culture, society, and you stay there, you try to collect the information, you mention all the things detailedly about them, then that is called as ethnography. If you are trying to read some ethnographies which are already there and you are trying to compare them, then that is ethnology. So when you take two or more cultures, whatever the information that is there, and you are trying to study how they are similar, how they are different. Okay, so that is ethnology, the comparative study that you are doing. This was followed by classical evolutionists. They were more using ethnological method. They did not go and study anywhere. So you need to understand this difference: ethnology, ethnography. Ethnology means, because anyhow we will be studying this in 8th unit in detail, but just you should know what does it mean. So ethnology means the comparison of two or more cultures, similarities and differences, okay, by using the studies that have been already done. But ethnography means going to particular place and making a detailed study of them. Okay, so that's what his focus. When you are focusing on one particular culture, then your approach will be ethnography. So he is emphasizing the empiricism. Empiricism means all the knowledge must be based on the experience. Okay, so personal experience, that you should notice them, you should look at them. Okay, so as per American empiricism, information or knowledge can derived only through the practical experiences. So whatever you are saying, that should be based upon practical experience. This is the meaning, okay? What is historical particularism? Studying a particular culture's history. You are studying that culture's history, and since he is focusing on one particular culture, what is the way to go? Ethnography is the best way to know it, okay? Because he emphasizes the empiricism. That means whatever you are saying should have a evidence. So that evidence or knowledge, how do you get it? You get it through experience. So what is it saying? What is it trying to convey? So I told you, right? He went to Arctic region. There he studied Eskimo tribe, and he got changed from there towards the anthropology. At that point of time, everybody was talking about classical evolutionism, but he opposed it and he said three things, three flaws he has found. What are the three flaws? First, unilineal evolution. Okay, assumption that considering the existing simple society as the survivals, and the third thing, no evidence. Okay, what? Unilineal. Second is survivals. Third is no data proper, inappropriate criteria to classify them. Okay, those are the three things that he talks about, and he's interested in the evidence, data. Okay, so Bose says that if you want to develop anthropology as a science, then we must collect authentic primary data first. So he criticized this secondary data, psychic unity, and conjecturalism. Conjecturalism means imagination. So he worked as museum curator at American Natural History Museum, where he learned about 300 tribal cultures from North America. Okay, so he is considered as father of American anthropology. So who is considered as father of Britain anthropology? E.B. Tyler, right? L.H. Morgan is from New York. Ellie Parker, you know, right? So Iroquois. So how can you say he is Britain? Because Iroquois, American Indians is the one where he starts his study, right? So he's considered as father of American anthropology. You know, like he was criticizing these people, right? Evolutionists, that you have some flaws. So there he also studies one of the tribes known as Kwakitun. So that's the name they generally call. Other name is Kwakitun. So this is the name of the tribe. So there he observed patrilineal was present before matrilineal. What did they say, classical evolutionists? They said matrilineal precedes the patrilineal. But here what he has observed, patrilineal precedes the matrilineal. So he argued that unilineal arrangement is based on the assumptions, what they have done, what the arrangement they have done, that is based on assumptions, not on the historical data that they have collected. Therefore, assumptions cannot be considered as something true, rather, there is a need for collection of data. Each society is collective representation of its unique historical past. So what we have today is representation, all the collections of our historical past, right? So every culture is influenced by three things. One is the environment, whatever that is there, environmental condition, psychological conditions, and historical conditions. So every culture develops based on these three things. So the cultural development happens based on three things. One is how your environmental condition is there, how the psychological condition is there, how the historical connections are present. So what is the objective of the research? So now he want to find out what is his objective. He is not trying to talk about all the stages, but to find out how certain stages, to find the process by which certain stages of culture were developed. You don't worry about the customs and beliefs. Try to understand how certain stages have been developed by what process. So that is the objective of his research. He is not trying to study the big picture. He is trying to study the single culture, and within that, he is not concerned about multiple stages. He'll take one thing and he'll try to study the process behind it. And he believes every culture development is influenced by three factors. That is environmental conditions, psychological conditions, and the historical connections. So, we'll try to have a recap. That first is geographer. Okay, he went to Eskimos, like Arctic region. He observed geographical determinism. Geographical determinism means geography is determining the culture, but he found that to be false, and he moved towards anthropology. At that time, classical evolutionists were there, so he agreed with evolution as a concept, but evolutionism he did not agree, and he has found some flaws. And he also said that if you want to make anthropology as a science, then you need data. So that data was missing with respect to the concept that has been given by classical evolutionists. So he is more interested towards that. And he has given the concept of historical particularism. It is nothing but studying the history of a particular culture in detail. His focus is not to study the broad picture, but rather to study one thing and the process behind that particular stage of cultural development. Okay, so cultural development, within the cultural development, what is the process that has been followed? He is not concerned about different stages. So to reach that objective, he want to use the empiricist approach. Empiricist approach means experience based or scientific evidence based. So how do you get that scientific evidence? Using the data. So he says that do not generalize anything. What you should do? You should go to first, you go to a particular culture. You should follow which approach? Ethnographic approach, not ethnological approach. You went to particular culture, and there in that particular culture, you go and study each and everything. Collect the data. You collect all the data. Don't make any conclusions now. Once you collect the data, arrange them in proper order. After arranging them in a proper order, then you generalize the content. Till then, no generalization. Don't give any conclusion until and unless you have a proper arrangement and proper evidence. So first, go to the field, use the ethnographic approach. In that particular culture, collect all the data, try to arrange them properly. After arranging them properly, then try to make the conclusion. That is what he says. So, how you will get the data? Ethnographic approach, through ethnographic process. And what are you collecting the data? What data are you collecting? You are collecting the data of that particular culture's history in detail. Okay, so now you can look at this. the basic premises. Collect as much as data you can. It is impossible to study all societies or cultures by single person, so use your students to collect that data. You cannot study everything. So anthropology should not only collect data but also improve it by systemization, arranging it properly, and then postpone generalization until sufficient data is collected. These are the basic premises. So he introduced the fieldwork tradition to anthropology, which was later explained in detail by Malinowski. Okay, so this tradition was mainly used by Boas as a methodology for authentic primary data collection. Whatever ethnography we are telling, that is known as fieldwork method. Okay, so you go there, you stay there, be with them, try to collect the data. So you study the local history, both oral and written, focus on a particular culture rather than universal culture, study within the community, okay, and study with the community. So you study with the community and you study within the community also. So you'll go, you'll try to find out and you see what they are doing also. And then anthropologists must learn the local language, translation should be done, engage local people in study because both garrulous and reticent. What do you mean by that? Somebody who is outspoken and somebody who is introvert. Okay, so reticent means who is introvert, garrulous means who is outspoken. Some people will tell everything, some people won't talk anything. So involve both the kinds of people. And next, involve female anthropologists for female viewpoints. So Ruth Benedict or Margaret Mead, which you tend to see in the last uh, theories of 6th unit. So there we'll be seeing them in cultural personality school. So they are the students of Franz Boas. What is he saying? Simple thing. You do the field work. When you go to the field, what you should do? Focus on one culture, not multiple cultures. Okay, so single culture, and don't make any generalization. For collecting, you cannot do alone. Rope in people, and while doing it, you should keep in mind that you should involve all the kinds of people. That means who are speaking out openly and who are not. Use female anthropologists because everything cannot be asked by a male anthropologist. Okay, so involve female anthropologists to know the female viewpoints. At the same time, you should know the local language. You should learn it. Okay, if not, use the translator. So who will be doing the translation? So that you have to do. So this is the approach or methodology. What contributions he have made? So one most important contribution is that he has classified anthropology into 4 branches. Whatever the 4 branches that I have said in the beginning, that linguistic anthropology, socio-cultural, biological anthropology, and archaeological anthropology. Later, one more branch which is newly added is applied anthropology. Okay, so he has classified them into 4 branches, and he trained many anthropologists who later contributed to the development of anthropology. And as per him, the concept of culture in anthropology is as important as zero in mathematics. Okay, so he studied all Red Indian tribes in North America. He has also given the concept of cultural relativism and used it to fight against racism. Okay, so that I will explain. I told you here that he was working in the museum, American Natural History Museum. See, there he learned about 300 cultures, tribal cultures from North America. There, while he was arranging the fossils, skulls of that particular cultures, what he observed is that the size of the skull of parent to children was varying. Like it should be constant. Like in other countries, whatever it is there, suppose there were migrants from China and other places to America. He is in America, right? So from there, they have come here. So now they have lived there. After the death, their parents to child skulls they are comparing. There it was different. So in China, parent to child it is different. But whereas in America, parent to child it is different. Then whatever the beliefs that were there at that point of time. Okay, so that race is based on the physical features. Okay, so whatever the biology that is there, based on that they classified the race, skin color, blood, and the physical features. So they believe that they are same throughout the generations. Okay, from generation after generation it is same. So that's why they used to classify people using the physical features. But now what did he observe? There is a change in the physical features, it is not constant. In China, parent to child skull ratio is different, and in US, parent to child skull ratio is different. That means physical features are influenced by environment, and it is not by the natural inheritance alone. Okay, so it is not just by inheritance alone; it is influenced by the environment. Because in America, they have got good nutrition, good food, and good support. So there, the child's development is quicker and faster. So, whatever the biological basis of race that was there, he tried to say, no, it doesn't. There is no such concept of race. There is influence of all the factors. Okay, so he believed that culture determines everything. He is cultural determinist. He says that not you have determinants of biology, you have determinants of geography, you have determinants of culture. So he says that culture is determining everything here. He goes extreme to say that culture determines everything. Okay, so that's where he tried to contribute to prove the myth of racism. Okay, so the concept of cultural relativism was given by him. So, what is cultural relativism? How did he talk about the cultural relativism? He has talked about historical particularism, right? Why you should not compare one culture with other? Because the cultural development was result of its historical connections. So every culture has its own history, its own development. So it's based on its historical development, right? So the culture is result out of its history, and history varies from culture to culture. That's why you cannot compare them or rank them. So he says that anthropologists should free themselves from ethnocentrism. So what these people were doing, these people were judgments. These people were making judgments that so and so culture is savagery, so and so culture is under the stage of barbarism, and they are at the highest stage of civilization, and they are comparing the traits of other cultures based on their values. Okay, so ethnocentrism is that ethno means group, centrism, center. So when you are keeping your group at the center and trying to place others above and below, that is called as ethnocentrism. So that means you are keeping your own group's values at the center. Okay, so try to understand this. It's a basic, simple concept, but many a times you get this question for 15 markers, 20 markers in the exam. However, we'll be studying it in answer format in unit 2.1. So, ethnocentrism. Ethno means group. Centric. At the center. So, you are keeping your group at the center and you are trying to rank others above and below based on your values, your own cultures, your own cultural values. You are trying to rank and rate others. That is called as ethnocentrism. So that this has been done by whom? Classical evolutionists, right? So the researchers who view the action of other people in terms of degree to which that correspond to their own. Okay, so don't go complex. Just try to keep that. If you're trying to judge others by keeping yourself at the center and you are trying to rank them based on your cultural values, that is called as ethnocentrism. So W.G. Sumner in his folkways, in the work folkways, he talks about it, but we'll be learning them later. Try to understand what concept Franz Boas has given. So he said this is ethnocentric in nature. Move away from this concept. Move away from this. This is not right. You cannot judge others by using your values. So rather, every culture is the result of its own history. Every history is different. Different stimuli leads to the different cultural developments. That's why you cannot rank or judge them. So that's why stop doing it and try to understand the cultures from their own values, from their own perspective. So henceforth, cultures are relative. So the cultural values are relative in nature. You cannot compare one another because their histories are different. Their histories decide what their cultural developments are. Henceforth, cultural relativism says that you are trying to judge the culture from its own values rather than your own. You're trying to understand the culture from its own values, from its own perspective, rather than from outsider perspective. So that is cultural relativism. Okay, so these are the contributions of Franz Boas. Cultural relativism. He studied the Kwakitul, multiple tribes of American Indian, especially Kwakitul Red Indians. So I told you here that they have studied multiple Red Indians, right? So studied almost all Red Indian tribes in North America. So one contribution of him is potlatch. So this will be studying in unit 3. Potlatch, P-O-T-L-A-C-H. Potlatch is nothing but a gift giving ceremony. This is the name of gift giving ceremony. So here in the studies that he has conducted among Red Indians, this is one of the important contribution. Here what he notices is that people do potlatch. That means gift giving ceremonies they can do multiple times, right? When somebody takes birth, when somebody gets some status, or when somebody dies, or for for the purpose of marriage. Many a times this happens, right? So he studied multiple times this gift giving ceremonies happen, and these gift giving ceremonies have some cultural significance. What is that cultural significance? Now you invite all the people, and what you will do, you will give very costly gifts to them. Okay, you will give very costly gifts. Why? To show that you are high in your status, to improve your status, right? And sometimes you try to destroy your wealth also. You will try to destroy your wealth in front of them. You are giving gifts, you are destroying your wealth. Why? To showcase that you have so much. Because of which people start respecting you, you will get higher status. So this is having some cultural significance, not just exchanging of gifts. So it is having the political aspect also, because you are ranked high in the society. Okay, and he tries to say that it is serving two important purposes. One is redistribution of the wealth. So wealth is not stagnant with one person, it is getting distributed. So when you are doing potlatch, that means you are calling people from different places. So other anthropologists, when they looked at this potlatch, they have given different perspectives. That means why this practice is there. Because the people stay at different islands and different areas where different seasons are influencing their agricultural process. So now, in some place there might be drought. Because of such practices, when the redistribution of wealth happens, it is helping them sustain the crisis. That is one view. And other people also view that it is continuing the cultural significance. By doing it, you are continuing your cultural customs and traditions. So there are multiple views about it, but he has studied this and he has talked about the gift giving ceremony. Okay, so this is the basic aspect. Done? So these are the contributions of Franz Boas. Then you have critical analysis of Franz Boas. Yeah, please, you have any doubt? Then ask. So when you are not keeping yourself at the center, you are not ranking anybody, then obviously you are treating everybody equal. You are not showing any bias towards ethnocentrism is showing bias that whites are the highest at the civilization. So they are more superior, they are more pure in blood. Okay, so that they were saying. Now he says that no, there is no such thing. Every culture has its own history, every cultural development has its own values. You cannot say which is superior, which is inferior. So if you cannot say superior or inferior, the concept of race is automatically vanished, right? So when you classify, then only the race. You're classifying people, you're trying to attach the hierarchy in that, then only there is a concept of race. But when there is no superiority or inferiority or hierarchy, then there is no concept of race, right? They have been training the human's mind over a long period of time that black color is not good. So considering the black people to be inferior, right? And whites are superior. Till you notice in many ads, still you notice them in many ads that they tend to use only white women to show that they are beautiful. Because that is the mindset that has been developed over the years. Okay, slim women to be beautiful. But you notice that like in Leslie White's, like when we study neo-evolutionism, that means new school of evolutionists, there he would be saying that it is the environment that determines. Because if you find a society where there is plenty of food, there everybody consumes and everybody is having good proportionate body, and their slim people are considered to be beautiful. They are rare, right? But you go to malnourished countries where there is no food at all. There the fat woman is considered to be beautiful. And recently I'll send you an article where the person with largest belly is considered to be beautiful. Men with. So it varies from society to society. So you cannot make any conclusions or judgments by your own values. Are you clear with? So he said you should make generalization only when you arrange them properly after a long period of time, sufficient data. But he could not say what is the sufficient amount. He collected so much data about Quakitul Redinians, he himself is confused what to do with that data. For everything he has collected data, that is so much that you cannot recognize what is important and what is unimportant. So he could not make any generalization. Okay, so his considerations gave new methodology to anthropology, but no theory in practice. There was no theory in practice. Only he made generalizations and he collected so much of data. Okay, so he could not give any conclusion. Yeah. He said that generalization should be made after collecting of sufficient data, but he did not know what is the sufficient amount. And by the time he became old, then he said that, okay, I think we cannot make any conclusion from that. He himself was not sure with his views. Right? His students became critical to him at a later point of time. Boas himself got frustrated in his last years. So these are the critical aspects of historical particularism. So here you need to understand one thing. Boas has used two concepts. One is holism, that means you should look at all aspects of that particular culture to understand its history. So, looking at all aspects, one is holism, other is relativism. Because of these two concepts, he has become very famous and they have become twin tenets of anthropology. Two important tenets of anthropology, that holism and relativism. So, American anthropology was taken to such a stage which was not there before in America. Okay, so their research started to focus more on the differences. In the past, research started to focus more on the differences rather than the similarities between the culture. But now the trend got changed after he introduced this concept of historical particularism. That is what you can write in the conclusion. So basic thing what you need to know about Franz was first you know his basic history. He was geographer basically, then believed in geographical determinism, later moved towards anthropology, criticized classical evolutionists for some of their flaws, and he said data is the most important thing if you have to make anthropology as science. So he gives some premises, collect as much as data you can, don't try to generalize, try to arrange them systematically, then postpone generalization until you have sufficient data. Then he gives some contributions to it. He studies the all Red Indians and there he studies them and he tries to give the concept of cultural relativism, breaks the myth of racism, and he also gives the what do you call the concept of what holism. Yeah, that means holism means while talking about the cultural history only, you have to collect all the data, right? Not just one singular aspect. That itself says that it's holism. And he focused on the ethnographic method. That means you should go to the field and do all these things, learn the local language, involve the females, males, involve all the people who are talking out, who are outspoken or who are introverts. So you have to involve all these people and collect the data. So after collecting the data, you try to make the generalization. He said you should make generalization, but in result you did not find it. Okay, so he gave only the method. Okay, he has introduced the method to collect data. So that has been, I'm sorry, that has been helpful. But however, there was no theory that has been put forth for anthropology. So that is one of the setback of Franz Boas. Contributions, you know, right? Like cultural relativism, four branches of anthropology, fieldwork approach. He trained multiple anthropologists over a period of time. He studied multiple Red Indians. Okay. The criticism or the limitations is that, like, if you want to collect such data, how much time it will take, how much cost it's going to involve, and generalization you cannot do you because you don't know what is sufficient. You told sufficient data, but you did not mention what is sufficient. So these are all the limitations. Einstein commented on this kind of approach. So there are two approaches. One is deductive approach, other is inductive approach. I didn't tell you this in the beginning because once you understand entire theory, Then you will be able to better understand this deductive method, inductive method. Deductive method means first you will say something and then you will try to prove it. That is deductive method. Inductive method means first you will try to gather everything and then you will try to prove it, then you will give some law. Einstein once upon a time said that there would have been no science if there is no deductive method. So if somebody followed the inductive method, they could never reach any conclusion. So the approach or the method used by Franz Boas was inductive method. What is the method used by classical evolutionists? Deductive method. They gave some conclusion, then they tried to show it. But here he did not make any conclusion. He tried to get the information, then he thought of making conclusion. Clear? Clear with Franz Boas? Any doubts? Franz Boas, despite the limitations, you mentioned about, despite the limitations, Franz Boas is considered as the father of American anthropology, and he has classified anthropology into 4 branches, okay, which today continues to be used. At the same time, you can also mention his concepts of holism and relativism has become the twin tenets of anthropology, which took anthropology to a next level, focusing on the similarities rather than the differences. So anyhow, in the conclusion, you have in the notes also, so don't bother about it. I always believe writing own conclusions are the best thing from your understanding. In the book, you read any number of conclusions, you will write your own conclusion in the final examination. Because if you do it now itself, that would be much better. People try to make framed introduction and framed conclusions, but they will work only in 4 to 5 questions. And there is difference of opinion who believe that that will save more time. That's okay, because if you cannot frame intro conclusions so quick and you don't have strong hold of the subject, then you will take time to frame conclusions and introductions. But if you are understanding properly, you can say these are the limitations, but despite the limitations, his contributions has been humongous to the anthropological discipline, that holism and relativism have become twin tenets of anthropology themselves. So you highlight that what is good and you conclude on a positive note. That's it. Clear? So now, if you have doubts with respect to previous, today class was small only.